Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm Clayton. I'm here with David Hartigan, who's the CEO of Hemp Heroes. He's also the founder of, I think, Ireland's most advanced CBD and hemp-based company. How's it going?
Thanks so much, Clayton. Delighted to be on.
Right, go on. So tell us all about Hemp Heroes. What got you into hemp, like based products, because it's quite a emerging sector and slightly different within the space. And yeah, just your
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, brilliant. So I suppose I wasn't originally in the kind of hemp space, and that's not my background. So my background is actually business and business consultancy. So I worked in Big Four for about 6.5 years, and I've always kind of had, I suppose, an entrepreneurial flair. So it was during this time while I was working in PwC, I was always kind of looking for other avenues, I suppose, to kind of branch out and maybe start my own business. And in a kind of really random, I suppose range of events, I actually end up starting a sports management company. So I started managing one guy in the UFC, and then because of the great work I done with him, I actually picked up another guy who was fighting in Bellator. So for managing the two fighters, I was kind of helping them with their media, their sponsors, marketing, kind of essentially trying to get as many eyes on them as possible and get as much money into them for sponsorship. So during the course of working with the two guys, I kind of, I suppose, broke down a number of sectors of, okay, right, we want like a clothing brand, we want maybe like a drinks company, a nutrition company, maybe a gym to sponsor them. And CBD actually came up quite a lot. So this would have been probably 2017 kind of into 2018, and CBD was still like really, really new. So at the time, there was a lot of athletes starting to use it. So you had the likes of like Nate Diaz and even a lot of professional golfers using CBD for recovery, for kind of like stress and inflammation. So I was like, look, this is the perfect fit for the two fighters. Reached out to a bunch of companies, got two responses, and one was from a company based in the UK. They actually sponsored one of my guys, and then the other one was from a company in Ireland, and they sponsored the other. And to be honest, when I got the products, I was very disappointed. Like, they were just really badly branded, packaging was terrible, price points were all over the place, how to use the product and the quality, it just wasn't there. So when I kind of looked at it, I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. I feel like it's kind of a broken mousetrap in a sense, and I could maybe make something a little bit better here and give people proper value for money. So spent the next kind of like 9 months researching the industry, was even on hemp farms in Ireland, and we eventually found a supplier actually in the UK who could white label for us. So we started with 5 white label products, and one pet product, interesting enough. And that's kind of how the journey, I suppose, started and how I got into the space. So to be perfectly honest, when I started at first, like my knowledge around CBD would have been like you could have wrote it on a post stamp. Like I knew it was a 3 letter word, had something to do with hemp or cannabis, and I wasn't exactly sure. And I suppose over the last couple of years, I've just embedded myself in the industry now that I'd be one of the leading experts in Europe. So I now sit on the board for the Cannabis Trade Association. So the CTA would be the UK and Ireland's, I suppose, largest non-profit for the hemp and cannabis space. And we came really full circle in that. I suppose we were a white label brand at the start with no manufacturing, probably very little knowledge, um, to now have in-house manufacturing and I suppose be one of the leading brands in Europe when it comes to CBD for pets.
Yeah, I remember I first like saw CBD in the sort of pet space around that sort of time, about 2017, 2018 inch. But we used to get it from a Dutch supplier who used to supply us with a number of different oils like salmon oils, etc. And but I remember
Yeah,
like the key thing was is I didn't really understand like I mean you kind of knew about the whole crack behind CBD. It was like inflammation, blah blah blah. But then it was like the
yeah,
percentages in the bottles were like quite it could like vary quite a lot. So like from 2% to 4%, and you were like, okay, so what is the right level? Because it sounds like a low amount within an oil, and so it was like for me. And then obviously the legislation changed in the UK so that just standard pet sort of distributors couldn't get involved with it anymore. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
like what
exactly. Yeah.
like what is the difference? Like, I mean, what would you say is a good level? Because I remember, I think mine I used to sell was like 2.25% or something, which sounds crazy low.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, So this is a question that we get asked, I suppose, asked all the time, and it was something that I had to kind of educate myself on. But a lot of people are unaware of. There's actually different grades or types of CBD, so all CBD isn't the same. And like the analogy I always go back to here is, it's like cars. Like if you have a Ferrari and I have a Micra, like they're not the same thing or same value just because they have four wheels and get us from A to B. So there's kind of three main types of CBD. You have full spectrum, which is like the whole plant, and like that's the highest quality. So what you've done there is, with the extraction process, you've a full range of cannabinoids, because CBD is like, think of it as like one molecule, and it's only one cannabinoid of like over 114 different types. So you want to have as many of these cannabinoids as possible because it creates a synergy effect. And usually a full spectrum CBD oil will be quite dark in color, so it's kind of that like browny blacky color, like it's really dark. And that's what's the best quality, because you get that full range of cannabinoids. You get like vitamins, minerals, terpenes, flavonoids. You get everything in there. So like, for a better word, it's like taking the whole plant, hemp plant, and juicing it, and you get everything. And that's actually what we do. That's what we manufacture. It's full spectrum CBD. The next one down then is the broad spectrum, which essentially what they've done is they remove the THC from the product. So hemp will naturally have very like low level of THC. Essentially, it's a trace element. So you're talking like the THC level in hemp is between 0.2 and 0.3%. Um, Actual cannabis will have like THC levels of like 20-30% plus. So like they're miles apart. It's like saying like having a 0.0 Guinness and a full Guinness, essentially. Um, so that's your broad spectrum. But you
Yeah,
see, in order to remove the THC, you need to use heat. And then your lowest level of CBD is isolate. So CBD isolate is essentially the cheapest stuff. It's one molecule. They've removed all the other goodness, and it's like ultra processed. And like the price for CBD isolate powder at the moment per kilo is probably around 350 $400. 1 gram of that will make you a 1,000 milligram product. So depending on what size bottle you're putting it in, it could make you like a 10% CBD for like literally a half a dollar. So like super super cheap, just really ineffective. And chances are, if someone buys it, they won't probably purchase ever again because they'll have such a bad experience. So like with the CBD you were stocking, um, it could have been any three of them levels. I would probably say it was a broad spectrum or an isolate, because that was what kind of first came to the market. It's only as it's evolved now, the consumer is more educated and saying, "Oh, hold on a minute, what type of CBD is this?" And like, give me the best quality you can give me, not just the cheapest, most refined version. So like the strength you take, it very much depends on what the needs are. So like with our pets range, we've three strengths, and we've basically made them idiot proof, because we used to get questions all the time of, my dog is X weight, what would you recommend? So we have our small paws, big paws, giant paws. So super easy to follow. Um, Small paws is for like dogs 25 kilo and below. Big paws are like for 26 up to maybe 50. And then the giant paws are for like if you basically like a small fucking donkey or like a Great Dane.
yeah. No, it's interesting because obviously, like, I don't know how many companies actually like would actually put that level of information on the packaging, because again, it makes sense because obviously, like any
Yeah,
through any cooking process, the more you cook the crap out of something, the less the nutrients stay
exactly. The
involved,
worse it is.
like the less goodness you're getting. Yeah, so it makes sense. But again, I never really considered it with the CBD thing. Like, you just kind of think CBD is just like this molecule, and it's like, yeah, it's grand. You know, you just give it to them,
Yeah.
and you would get the same value from no matter what. So I guess there's like it's the education phase, isn't it? Which is what we're always involved in, I guess. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's interesting,
Big time
man.
no.
How do you how do you get that across to people, like generally to the consumer?
Yeah, well, like, to be honest, at first it was probably more of a difficult thing, because we would come up against other brands and they'd be like like significantly cheaper. Like you could have something that was say like £50, say for our product, and then competing against a product which may be like £35. But bear in mind, it's been made for literally like 60p. So you'd have to try to get it across to a buyer to be like, hey, look, our product's completely different than our product. Like people will repeat purchase our product and will come back because they can see the impact. If they buy that other product, probably unlikely they're ever going to come back because it's such a low quality product. Um, so how we've kind of tried to differentiate ourselves from other brands, one is definitely the in-house manufacturing. So because we're manufacturing in-house, we've way more control over the quality of our products and what was actually goes into the products. Um, so like 90% of hemp and CBD products in Europe are actually white label or private label. So the vast majority of brands out there, even on the human side, they've actually no manufacturing or very little manufacturing capabilities. So because we've done it in house, we can really kind of stand over our products and say, hey, look, like we can guarantee what goes in there is meant to be there, and like our levels are correct. They all get third party lab tested. So that's kind of one of our unique selling points. The second one is actually how we manufacture. So we use a cold press method, and by cold pressing, we put it under high pressure, low heat. And again, back to what you just said there, like you're not cooking the life out of it, because the more heat you apply, you convert cannabinoids, you'll actually damage some of them, and you can actually burn off flavonoids and vitamins and minerals, which essentially is why you're buying the product. It's for them benefits. So you want to keep heat to a minimum, essentially. So that would kind of one of the other things. And then thirdly, I suppose how we're trying to get across the difference in quality is by clinical studies. So for the last kind of 2 years, we were working on an osteoarthritis pain management study with the UCD Veterinary Hospital. So UCD would be Ireland's largest veterinary university, and they worked with us on a study with dogs with osteoarthritis, and it was a double-blind placebo. So essentially, what that meant is the vets didn't know what product the dog was getting, nor the owners, and they basically had like a sample A and a sample B. So at random, they would get either one of them would be CBD, and then the other one would be hemp seed oil, the placebo. And essentially, we were able to compare results. There was a number of X-rays taken, and then a number of kind of visits to the vet, essentially to I suppose analyze the difference. Ask the actual owner of the pets, like, have they seen any change in their mood, their movement, like how they are. And the results we actually found were quite interesting. So like in all cases where the CBD was given, there was actually a noticeable reduction in pain. So we have a clinical paper being published towards the tail end of the summer, and I think that one's going to go into, well, what we're aiming for is to put it into the, I think it's the American Journal of Veterinary Medicine. It's like a JAVE, I think is the acronym for it. If there is certain processes done to the product, it could possibly affect the kind of absorption and effectiveness of it. The treats we do at the moment aren't CBD based; they're all hemp cake based. So we've like organic hemp cake that goes into our treat. So we actually upcycled our waste, and that to an extent isn't as bad in terms of like the heat. Now, again, they're all done. The treats, they're not done under like a high kind of heat load. They're not cooked, like they're not biscuits in a sense. So it's not as bad. It still keeps the nutrients. But in terms of like what method to use for the actual like consuming the product for pets, to be honest, usually liquids are the best. So like the drops, the tinctures by far, because you can add them to their food, put them on a tree, or essentially put them directly in their mouth. So they're quite versatile. They're small to carry around. And most dogs as well don't like capsules or kind of tablets. So it kind of solves that problem. And we find that works well. So like by far, that would be the most popular way of, I suppose, providing CBD to pets would be tinctures.
Because normally it's like it's in like mixed with hemp seed oil, right? When it's in those pipette in those bottles, right? Like in my
Yeah. So
experience, like
when you have your CBD,
yeah, in my experience, dogs like they're not mad on the taste of it, like on the taste of hemp seed oil. I mean, I know
yeah,
hemp seed oil is great for them, but like as in terms of palatability, it's not like the most fantastic generally.
yeah. So for palatability, what we do is we actually add a little bit of salmon oil in there, and that helps with the taste. So CBD needs to be mixed with a fat soluble for absorption. So we add in a little bit of salmon oil that helps with the, I suppose, the fat soluble side of things, the absorption and the palatability, and we find that works the best.
No, cool. Because obviously that was always the thing. I think when it first came out, it was just mixed with just hemp oil. I remember it. The taste was obviously a bit of an
Yeah,
issue, but that's what I mean. I guess mixed in with salmon oil would make a big difference, just because they dogs generally like the
yeah,
taste of salmon oil, whereas hemp oil they don't. It's like, I mean, I think like we
yeah.
were I brought across a product which was a sheep fat mixed with hemp oil, just to get dogs to eat the hemp oil, because unless it's mixed with something
Oh,
else,
okay.
they don't generally like the taste of it particularly.
Yeah, avoid
Like
it.
in the trials I did, yeah. And I'll be honest, I only ever tasted it, but it's absolutely honking to taste as well. I mean, not that I particularly like the taste of salmon oil, but but hemp seed oil, it really isn't the best taste going, Yeah. So,
Yeah,
like, so
no,
tell me, because
definitely.
obviously the problem is, like, obviously you're an Irish company, and I know the
Yeah,
Irish market. Obviously, I grew up in Ireland. My brother has a shop in Ireland. It's a small market. It's like,
yeah.
the Republic of Ireland is like, it's probably more like 5 million than people nowadays. But I mean, when I was young, it was like 3.5
Oh
million.
yeah,
It's
literally, yeah.
probably more like 5 million nowadays. But I mean, that's like less than the size of London. It's like half the size of London. So as a place to sort
Yeah.
of center your business, it must be challenging because you're on the peripheries of Europe. Everything costs a fortune to get to and from Ireland. Like, how do you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, well, I suppose we're kind of maybe lucky in a sense in that because we've in-house manufacturing, we've cut a lot of the fat already out of the supply chain. So, like usually in, I suppose, the hemp industry, you'd have a hemp grower who grows the plant, then it goes to a processor, then that probably goes to a third party to refine it, and then it goes to a white label producer, and then it comes to you. We've essentially been able to cut that all out, and the only part of the process essentially we don't partake in is the growing element. And we actually, I suppose 3 years ago we did try our hand at growing hemp, and I actually always love telling the story because of all things that we had issues with, it was probably something that I wasn't going to, I suppose, never expected. So we rented land, we rented 2 acres. I don't even own as much as a house plant, so growing was like way outside my expertise, and we're like, right, we'll bring in the experts, and basically they can lead us through it, and we'll go through the process, and at the end of this, we should have 2 acres of hemp, and try do our own processing at that point and make it into a finished product. So we'd have kind of the full supply chain. So we rented 2 acres. We hired in farmers to plow the field, sow the field, slurry the field. We're going to do it all organic. We got our license to grow the whole lot. And what I was told is essentially just leave it in the field, come back in 6 weeks, check on it, and then like after 12 weeks, it's basically time to harvest. So it's quite a very like, I suppose it's quite a resistant crop, and it doesn't need to be in great land. It can be grown with kind of low water, and it's actually really good for the soil as well. So it will regenerate the soil that it's in, and plus it's great for sequestering CO2. So it actually takes out more CO2 out of the atmosphere than trees. So we were like, right, we'll do this. I came back in 6 weeks and I seen a load of wild deer in the field, and I was like, oh, that's strange. I was like, Jesus, there's loads of deer here. When I went in, they literally went around and they'd nipped the tops of the plants as they were growing. So everything that would gotten the kind of shin knee height essentially looked like someone that came through with a trimmer and just split them. So that was our experience on growing.
You didn't try again after that. You decided against it, did you?
Yeah, so after that, like, well, I learned a lot more about deer. I can tell you that much. So I found out that deer can jump really high. They can jump about 6 to 7 foot. So it's not a case of put a small little fence in or a bit of barbed wire. Like they can jump really
Yeah.
fucking high, and they're smart. So but like we tried scarecrows and all at the time to try salvage some of it, but like just nothing worked. So getting deer fence for 2 acres just wouldn't have been, it wouldn't make economical sense. Plus
No.
the harvest is pretty much gone, so like we just had to have it as a write off. But from that experience, then we decided, right, we'll actually just work with farmers. So we buy
Yeah.
directly off organic hemp farmers. Ideally, we work with kind of ones in Ireland where we can, and then outside of that, we work with farmers across Europe because again, like Ireland's a small, I suppose, small economy, it's a small country, and it's the hemp industry is even smaller. Again, there's only maybe 80 people growing hemp in Ireland, where like the UK it's probably hundreds, France there'd be thousands, and then across Europe and everywhere else there'd be much larger hemp producers. So instead of putting all of our risk into Ireland, we've kind of branched that out that we can work with a number of different hemp farmers, and it spreads our risk that if there was say a growing issue or a bad season in one country, we're not fully dependent on them. So that's kind of what we decided to do after our experience with trying to grow ourselves, and decided, right, let's work with farmers, not be farmers. So like in terms of the challenge that we face getting into Europe, like because I suppose we've such good margins to an extent, that allows us maybe a little bit more freedom that like we're already kind of talking to a couple of international distributors, which they'd already have the connections. We can, I suppose, cater for a margin for them and then get it into the retailers. So like that's kind of, I suppose, how we're looking at to play kind of in Europe. Um, and again, the products again they're really small. Like I mean, like we could have a product which is like our average sale price is like 50, 60 euro. Like a small product that weighs, I don't know, less than 100 grams. probably 50 grams could be like a 50, 60 euro like recommended retail price, and like to an actual pet store we could maybe be charging like 30, 40 euro for that. So like a small like box a product could be worth a couple of thousand euro. So I suppose they're
Yeah.
small high value ticket items, which means then like we're not shipping dog food, which is lower margins, bigger volume. So it kind of works in our favor, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, and look, that's always the truth of it, is that if you are, let's say, shipping stuff, if you're shipping stuff which is high value, if you can fit a couple of thousand euros in a couple of boxes, then that makes a big difference. Because obviously, if you're selling chicken food at like
Exactly.
500 euros a ton, that's a whole different ball game, when it comes to logistics. I mean, do you find that
Yeah.
how much of your market is sort of domestic now? Then, like as you've moved on, because obviously like the Irish market, it's not that developed. I mean, it's kind of like, to my experience, like the main wholesaler there would be Glencrag, and then you've got maybe Chanel and a couple of other smaller players which sort of
Yeah.
dominate the market. So, like, how much of the market has become Ireland, and how much has been, let's say, the rest of Europe, the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, I suppose in Ireland we probably took a little bit of a harder route than I suppose needed to. So we actually work with all of our pet stores direct, which it's better for our margins. It just meant it took a lot of kicking doors for me. So like we've about 80 plus retailers in Ireland who stock our pet products, and we've about 15 vets. Um, so like again, the market's really small. You're talking there's maybe only 120, 150 max pet stores in Ireland. So the market's really small. It's attainable enough to be able to go after it direct. That's what we decided for Ireland. So like within Ireland, we'd be very strong. Like we'd be by far the number one selling brand. We're the most recognized. We've the most kind of accreditations. Um, and then outside of Ireland, that's kind of where we're at now, because we've essentially kind of hit saturation where like there's not many more chains we could kind of deal with. Vets is another avenue. We have had a lot of interest in vets, and because of the clinical studies we're doing, um, they seem a lot more on board to actually kind of have conversations with us and explore possibly stocking the product or actually recommend it to their clients. Because up until now, there hasn't been any really studies done in a European level. A lot of them have been US driven, and most vets are very much kind of like either on the fence about CBD or just don't believe it works. So with the clinical research, we can kind of maybe, I suppose, flip the script on that and get them behind it and say, hey, look, here's the clinical feedback that we're seeing, like trial our products, see it firsthand, and then maybe we could do something together. So that's kind of our goal probably for Ireland. Outside of that, then unfortunately the UK is still closed to us because the VMD in the UK, for whatever bizarre reason, classifies CBD as a medicine, a veterinary medicine, which doesn't make any sense because you can go in and buy next to near the similar, I suppose, a similar CBD product in a Holland and Barrett or a Tesco or any other health food store and consume that yourself. But if that was in a pet store sold, it would be a veterinary medicine. So unless all humans are taking veterinary medicines, it doesn't make much sense. Um,
Yeah,
so like that it will eventually change. How long is probably like how long is a piece of string? Like you guys obviously have a general election coming up. There's probably a lot more pressing things, but I have heard that there is talks of possibly redesignating CBD as a food, and if that happens, then that rule may change. But again, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be longer. So unfortunately, the UK we can't do anything because the UK would be our next logical step. So we've kind of had to look further afield. So we're doing a little bit of work in Cyprus, and we've some interest from like Malta, some of the other kind of mainland European countries, and the US is probably a safer bet to us for an extent because in the US the CBD market is already quite mature. Um, the consumer is quite educated on it, and the proposition that we bring is much higher quality organic products which are essentially not heat treated or solvent free. So we kind of raise the bar and bring something new to the market that the US hasn't seen. So like that's kind of our focus, probably the US market, and getting into some of the bigger retailers over there. That's probably like our next logical step, and that's why we're exhibiting at Super Zoo this year.
yeah, and I think, like, the truth is that, like, America, I think, is a nicer market than compared to the EU, just because
Yeah.
obviously cultural differences in the EU are high, language barriers, and every market's so different. Like in France, they want you to be French. The Germans are very slow
Yeah.
adopters in terms of like, they need to make sure everybody else is already using it and it's got like great reviews, and then eventually it gets going. I mean, the Dutch are always early adopters, but then the Dutch market is always highly competitive because they are early adopters. So every single new
Yeah.
product ends up in Holland and it burns out in Holland quite often as well. So again, it's like the EU market. I always find. I mean, whereas the American market, it's what 300 million people. Everyone speaks
I
English.
know. Big
It's
spenders.
it, yeah, and like I say, it's dominated by there's like half a dozen big retailers, and then you have like let's say distribution chains. It's a much more like addressable market from an English speaking base anyway. That's for sure. I've always found that.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own ideas, but
Yeah.
for
No,
me, like
definitely.
even though I speak a few different European languages, I've always found America an easier proposition in terms of getting traction. Um, I mean, is there
Yeah.
much
No, I
competition
definitely
in the
agree. And
US
like,
market?
yeah, so like the US is probably where CBD started. So there definitely is a lot of competition. And interestingly, what I've seen, because you see, bear in mind, even in the US, the vast majority of products are white label or private label. So there's a lot of big producers of like bulk CBD ingredients who basically sell to every brand under the sun. And most products on the shelf are probably no different to the one beside it. It's probably made in the same factory or the one up the road. So
Mm,
kind of what happened in the UK market as well as the US is a lot of brands basically got created overnight, got in ingredients from the same suppliers, went out to the market, and then kind of took off like a rocket, but then quickly realized that there was no longevity in the business. So, like in the UK, that's happened actually quite a lot. So, actually, the two companies who I had sponsor my fighters, both of them actually aren't in existence anymore. So, there's been a lot of CBD companies which have gone under. Um, there's one or two in the UK who've actually went into receivership 2 or 3 times and like just about been saved by the skin of their teeth. And a lot of them aren't profitable and they're not actually making money. They're raising money, burning money, trying to obtain market share, but their fundamentals in terms of their manufacturing costs are probably wrong. And that's why they won't have longevity in the industry where we're in a nice comfortable position that we're manufacturing. It's probably a slower pace than these other companies, but we're in it for the long haul and we can scale quite quickly because of the technology we have. So, similar in the US, there's a lot of brands who have either completely just went bust or wouldn't exactly be performing very well and wouldn't be profitable. So, I think they're in like there's a lot of strain in the industry. Um, and the majority of the products in the US are made with CBD isolates or broad spectrums. And next to none of them that I've seen are cold pressed. So we kind of bring a new aspect to it because we're bringing a higher quality, which is actually safer and it's more effective in terms of the kind of results you'll get from the product. And there's no solvent, so it's cleaner from the environmental perspective. It's more energy efficient, and we've got our B Corp certification, which again gives us kind of the competitive edge in the sustainability space, and the fact that we're using all certified organic hemp, which other producers may not be doing, plus the clinical studies because a lot of these other brands in the US they just won't put money into clinical studies because usually kind of one of two things. One, they actually don't own their ingredients, so it's coming from a third party, so they're not going to verify the effectiveness of a third party's ingredients, which they can't really control the IP of. And secondly, it's a huge cost. Like we looked at doing some studies in the US, and like as soon as you talk to anyone, you're running into like $200,000-$300,000. It's crazy money, like, and that'll be for
mm,
a very small scale study with maybe a handful of dogs. So a lot of companies don't want to put that money in there, where what we've done is we've partnered with leading universities in Ireland and we're looking at partnering with a couple of others in even the UK and across Europe to really back up our evidence of the effectiveness of our products. And our products aren't a white label brand, it's our unique, I suppose, CBD oil that's cold pressed. So we can kind of bring a full kind of 360 proposition that we have products you can trust and stand over. And here's the, I suppose, anecdotal and the clinical feedback to show that they work. So that's our real competitive edge in the US. And I suppose that's what's going to get us to kind of break into chains and they'll see the difference. And like, even with the color of our oils, like our oils are literally like engine oil. So like, even from a eye level, you can see, wow, this looks like it comes from a hemp plant, and this other stuff that's clear like water. Like if you put it in a glass, I wouldn't even know it was CBD.
yeah. I mean, and I think that's the thing as well, is like it's getting across to people sometimes that like the pet trade is full of like companies that are essentially just marketing companies. They're like literally just white
Yeah,
labeling like off the shelf products, and it's then trying to educate the customer when you actually have a point of difference, like you know your whole spectrum CBD, where it's got much better health benefits. Because again, if you're giving something as a supplement,
exactly.
you want it to actually have the effects it's supposed to have. Like it's a bit different. Like to,
Well, yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's like that's the reason you're buying it.
yeah,
It's not like like ice cream. It's like, well, this was like
yeah,
cold made, and this one was hot made, and like the nutrients are better in this ice cream. I don't really give a shit. I'm buying the ice cream because I want something that tastes good. This is
yeah,
the key function of the product is that it's a good it's
yeah,
doing a certain thing for you. So, but again, it's like, I mean, it's trying to get that education across. And like, it's funny what you were saying about vets, because I have this thing with vets really that like that unless they were taught it as they went through veterinary college, they don't like to get involved with it. It's kind of like there's a lot of resistance to, let's say, newer um,
yeah, completely.
ideas coming out, and like that goes for food, and it goes for like I say, for supplementation as well. But again, it's like,
Oh, big time.
and this is always the problem with any new industry. That like I'm obviously involved in black soldier flying. Like we have the same problems that you're trying
Yeah.
to build an entire industry from the ground up. So you're trying to educate, but also produce things in the most cost effective way, the most effective in terms of like price, the most effective in terms of like what it actually does, and making sure any claims you make can actually be substantial. But it's a massive undertaking, and like actually getting the knowledge through to the end user is one of the toughest things. I mean, how do you really like how do you actually tackle that at the moment? Do you do like social media, or like what's your strategy at the moment, or is it just working with stores that you can talk to about it and like promote the product through?
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of a couple of different factors. Like we're probably lucky in some sense in that we've kind of put the hard work and the kind of hard yards in early. That when people think of CBD, especially in Ireland, anyways, we're usually kind of number one and kind of first to mind. That we have this reputation of like if you want to talk about CBD for pets or look for a product, like Hemp Hero should be your number one stop. Um, so like a lot of our business is probably driven through word of mouth, where you have a dog who has joint issues, you buy one of our products, say in a pet store that stocks us, or you hear about it, or you just Google us and you find us online, um, you'll see the impact within about 5 to 7 days. And like some of the feedback we have is like it's literally night and day. Where like dogs who couldn't get on the couch, couldn't walk up the stairs, and they're flying around like pups again. Like we've had people who even had their dogs on different medications and have been either I suppose, able to reduce them or completely stop them from the impact the CBD is having and the ability it has from an anti-inflammatory and a pain management, I suppose, aspect. So a lot of that is word of mouth because if you have a dog who's crippled or arthritis, you see the difference. You're probably going to tell your family, your friends, and then you're like, "Oh, Jesus, Mary up the road has a dog who's bad joints. Maybe I'll let them know." And Jesus, be great for them. Like we'd actually a customer, I think only yesterday, who had placed their second order, and I just sent her an email to say, "Look, how have you found the product so far?" And she said, "Oh, I actually haven't used it. I bought it from my friend. Heard your stuff was good. Her dog is doing amazing. The joints are so much better, moving around way better, just better mood, better everything. I just bought some for my own dog now." So like that's the kind of feedback that we're getting. So word of mouth to be huge, and then yeah, like I suppose social media is another big aspect. We've kind of a couple of different ambassadors and people that we work with who'd be, I suppose, trusted opinions within the pet space, and like they wouldn't just recommend anything. Um, and then the other thing that we do as well, which probably makes us quite unique as a kind of small company, would be we work with a lot of animal rescues. So we have 12 animal shelters and charities across Ireland, and they get our products for free as part of our giving back program. So they get to use them in the shelters. We've testimonials and feedback from them, and they'll occasionally actually post about our products and say, "Look, been using this. It's worked really well for anxiety, for joint issues, for skin problems, and even epilepsy. Like highly recommend it." And that kind of, I suppose, really resonates with customers. One in that we're actually making a positive impact because we can't just write blank checks. giving product to them and some additional kind of I suppose donations, it goes a long way. It massively improves the lives of the dogs who are waiting to be rescued and adopted. And it also, I suppose, it's a testament to the quality of our products. So if these rescues are like willingly and I suppose using our products, and like they're not going to use them if they didn't see an impact, so they're obviously using them for a specific reason, and recommending us, then to the consumer that gives them a lot of trust that, okay, well, if this charity is using them, they must be good.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it is all about just getting things out as well, and word of mouth is massive. And like I say, I mean, I
Yeah,
know myself when I sold dog treats. Like I had one dog treat brand, like which let's say these puppy trainers start using. They were on like a forum full of puppy trainers, and then before you know it, like my sales on that particular like item just exploded as a result. So like word of
yeah,
mouth is massive, but it is kind of like it's like rolling a like boulder up a hill and waiting for it to like roll on its own. It can always take time. I mean,
yeah, big time.
do you get like and again this might seem like a silly question, but like do you get much negativity with the connections to cannabis, like because obviously there's ignorance in everything, and like you know,
Yeah,
like the fact it's a cannabis based product, like you're in my mind, I'd imagine there's going to be like some fella out there who's like, well, is my dog going to get out of his mind on that? You know, do you know what I mean? Like, and or like, oh, I wouldn't give
yeah,
that to my dog because I don't agree with drugs, or you know, just people have stupid opinions sometimes, and you know, it's like with the insect industry, it's like everyone thinks you're on the next Klaus Schwab and you're trying to make people eat insects, you know. So do you know what I mean? It's like I'm not eating insects. I'm not telling you to do whatever you want, like you know. But do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like this.
yeah.
Do you ever have much of that?
Yeah, so like probably in the early days, we used to do kind of like when we were only getting started, we would have done a lot of kind of like markets and events. And I used to always laugh because you'd be set up, sitting there, you'd have your banners and everything, and then someone would walk past and you'd see them kind of like nudging each other, and like you'd hear like a whisper of like, "Is that hash or is that weed?" You're like, "Is that legal?" And then like I'd always just laugh and I'd be like, "No, no, it's completely legal." So if like I heard them, I'd just address it and be like, "No, no, it's completely legal." I was like, you won't get high off any of our products. So it's like, if that's what you're looking for, like it's not for you, and just kind of make a joke of it. And sometimes they'd go, oh, okay, like, no, just really interesting. Like, I didn't know what hemp is, or like, is this not cannabis? And then you'd have to explain, well, technically it is, but it's not the type of cannabis you're thinking of, because cannabis is a family of plants. In there you've hemp and you've basically marijuana on the other side. The terminology for like cannabis and hemp and everything, it's really been kind of muddied around. So like
Hmm.
most people kind of just put them all in the one basket, and like a CBD product, some people think it'll get them high and intoxicated and it's addictive and all sorts. Where it's complete polar opposite. Like hemp is essentially non-alcoholic. You could consume probably any amount of hemp and it's not going to get you high. And like smoking hemp flower is not going to get you high. If you had a whole acre of it, you'll die from smoke inhalation quicker than getting high from it, because the level of THC in it is so low, and
Uh,
the CBD actually counteracts some of the effects of THC. So interestingly, we were discussing some kind of CBD business with some doctors in Malta, and in Malta they have a big medical cannabis program for people, and they'll actually prescribe them high THC products medically, and then also prescribe them CBD products to counter the high effect so they can actually function. So
right.
like some people kind of just group them together and they're just like, oh, it's all the one thing, where like I suppose it couldn't be further from the truth. So initially we did have that issue and some resistance, that people thought we were basically drug dealers, or like trying to sell something illicit, or like it was kind of, there was something like dark about it, and like we were kind of flying under the radar. But like we're a registered food business. Everything we do is fully compliant to all EU regs. Um and
Uh,
then I suppose it was kind of the education piece then to retailers as well, because from the retailer's perspective, again, at first they were probably a bit like, oh, I don't know if I want this in my shop. Like, is this going to like bring you bad press, or like, is it legal? So like initially we did have them issues. To be honest, now not so much. And even on the veterinary side, it's probably very few vets that I come across these days who are like completely anti CBD. And usually, if I can speak to them for longer than a minute, I can turn them around quite quick. Where I can say, okay, like, well, what's the issue? Oh, well, like it's not tested. it's unsafe. I don't think it has any value. And you're like, okay, well, like where did you get that information from? Because there's a number of clinical studies which prove it's safe for long-term use. So like Mars Pet Care have done studies who like Mars are huge. Obviously they own Pedigree Foods,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
huge number of pet brands. So like if they're putting money in to
Royal
show the
Canin,
safety and
Origin.
efficacy of it,
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
exactly. It obviously it's safe, and then they're like, okay, well, it doesn't work, and then that's when I say, well, look, we're actually doing clinical studies to prove it does. Here's the list of the feedback we have from like major animal rescues across the country. So like either we're all on the loony train here and seeing like placebo, or there is having an impact, and like there's more research to be done. And usually when you kind of have that discussion, they're like, oh, okay, right, you've kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Maybe there is something here. And when you do have studies, I suppose, published, come back to us and we'll look at them, because they're very much kind of like research focused. And if you can put a paper in front of them which shows it has a positive impact, they are a bit more open to actually kind of having a conversation.
uh, yeah. I mean, because the funny thing is, like, I mean, I used to sell hemp years ago because obviously, like, it was used a lot in bird seeds, especially
Yeah, exactly.
amongst like canary foods, like British finch foods, that sort of stuff. And we used to sell hemp seed as a straight. But it was always I was always like, you know, like grey on like the differences, because I remember you'd have some fella who'd like buy some hemp off you, oh, is that for like you got like canaries or something? Oh no, I was going to try and grow it, and you'd be like, yeah, good luck with that, mate. Do you know what I mean? But, do you know what I mean? But it's like, but again, it's like
Yeah.
it's that grey where I think like people just think when they think of like hemp, they think of like marijuana, they think of, you know, weed and all this sort of capers, you
Yeah.
know. So it's there's an element of ignorance there to do with it, to be honest. And
Oh, big time.
yeah, so it's but again, it's like, again, everything's part of the same education process, that like you need to people need to be exposed to things a lot. I think it's like the 7 points of exposure. You need to have 7 different points of exposure
Yeah.
from 7 different sources before people get their heads around it and they actually go, oh no, like those CBD is not the same. But it's like the first time they see it, they're like, what? And you need to keep showing it to them in lots of different scenarios, you know. So I mean, like, so for you, like,
Yeah.
what's the
No,
future
big
going
time.
forwards? Do you see yourself moving into the human food side more, or do you see yourself increasing the range of products, or like maybe making things
Um,
more
to be
food
honest,
based?
we're already kind of, I suppose we're in the human side already. So like we've our human range listed with Holland and Barrett in Ireland. So there's definitely a big opportunity to grow that part of the market, because we already kind of have some connections there. We've good traction. Um, as it currently stands, I would probably say the human CBD market is definitely a bigger prize. But equally, the pets is growing. And I think once we get some of this clinical research out, like we've the pain management study finished, we're actually starting an anxiety study in the next kind of couple of weeks. And I think the more research we can do to show evidence, the pet sector will grow. It'll maybe a little bit slower, but yeah, kind of I suppose what the next 6 to 12 months looks like for us is trying to probably grow both markets. Like for the US, we're actually specifically just focusing on the pet market to start. Because I think if we try doing the pet as well as the human, they're two completely different channels. It's just
Yeah,
going to get really messy really quick. So best to kind of keep it tight and narrow, focus on the pets, kind of our, I suppose, our hero products, so our best selling products. Like we've 11 products in our pets range now. Um, by far some of them outsell others in terms of just it's what people want, the consumer wants, but it's nice to have choice. So we'll probably lead with our top kind of 3, 4 products to get into the US market and grow that way. And then as we expand, then we can kind of maybe add on more SKUs. Like new product development wise, we've maybe 1 or 2 new pet products coming out in the forms of treats. But like we've a huge product range already. We've 10 products on the pet side. We've another 17 on the human side. Like there's not really much we don't do right now. So I don't think there's a huge amount that's going to go on in the NPD side on kind of hemp.
yeah.
We are actually looking at some functional mushroom products, which are quite cool, I think. So functional mushrooms are like a really interesting space,
But
and it
like,
probably aligns quite well with the CBD space.
is that like lion's mane mushrooms and that sort of stuff? Is it, or
Exactly. Yeah.
okay?
So like lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, there's some really unique mushrooms out there that have kind of similar pharmacological effects to CBD. So like some are really good for relaxation, for kind of cognitive focus, for joint issues, for inflammation, skin issues. So we're looking at maybe doing some combinations of CBD with mushrooms, or possibly some mushroom products on their own, which I think could open up a new market. And again, it's probably back to square one though, because it's the education of why would I give my dog mushrooms? Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a never ending cycle, I suppose, of educating consumers and trying to explain to them that like there's different qualities to every product, and this is why ours outperforms, I suppose, other products in the market.
Yeah. 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 I mean, do you see like mushrooms being a potential in the pet market in terms of like
Um, in the pet market, I'm not too sure. Like on the human side of things, definitely. So like
yeah,
Holland and Barrett are kind of, I wouldn't say heavy into mushrooms, but it's becoming a lot more of a staple product in health food stores, especially with like the likes of lion's mane becoming more mainstream. Like if you asked someone 3 years ago what lion's mane was, they would have probably told you it's something around the lion's neck, or is it a piece of clothing? They wouldn't have had a clue it was a mushroom. So I think the education on
yeah,
functional mushrooms and their benefits is really coming a long way. So on the human side, definitely there's some applications there, and again, we already have some channels that we could possibly put products through. On the pet side, that's going to be a much longer road. I think the consumer's just not educated on it. Like CBD is a bit of a jump for them. Asking them to put
mm,
mushrooms in your dog's food as a powder, I think, is an even bigger jump. And I think from a European perspective, it's probably going to be another 2-3 years before that's even a thing. The US, I've seen a couple of products creeping in. It'd be interesting to see at Super Zoo if there's a couple of mushroom products there, um, because it is kind of an interesting new space, and it kind of falls into this whole health, wellness, longevity for pets, and that like it's about keeping your pet in the kind of optimal health for as long as possible.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting, like, because obviously, like, things keep moving, and you never know which way trends are going to go. And like, there are a lot of trends that follow human trends. So obviously, like the
Yeah,
supplement market is has grown massively over the last 4 or 5 years, and with it. But then also whether, let's say, things like CBD head into sort of like into other products, like like I've seen it in dog food, which I'm not sure is the right way for it, but maybe like the dog food topper market is another way of like putting it in,
yeah,
is like a as a way of adding it in. So I don't know. There's I'm always interested to see where things are sort of like going to, and yeah, and if functional mushrooms were to hit the pet market, I think that could be interesting. I don't know what the effects are. I've never really thought about it, if I'm honest with you. But
yeah.
I've taken functional mushrooms myself, like, so I can, like, I wouldn't be
Oh,
against the
okay.
it conceptually. Like, yeah, I did, yeah, like it, because again, it's good for things like brain stimulation, that sort of stuff, like regrowing the neural
Exactly.
pathways. There's a lot of benefits to functional mushrooms, and realistically, I guess if it works with the biology of dogs, and I'm sure it's something people would buy. I'm just not sure how that biology would sort of match up, to be honest, because not
Yeah.
everything translates over particularly. So yeah, no, that's pretty
No,
fascinating.
definitely. Yeah, and I think like I think there's a huge education piece on mushrooms. Like even in the UK for CBD, like if the regulation does change, that's going to be a big task to try explain to people in the UK like CBD is safe, it's effective, and it has these potential benefits. And because for so long it just hasn't been there. And like similar now with mushrooms, if we do kind of get into that space for pets, like the US would probably be an easier market to kind of bring along. They're a bit more kind of adaptive, I suppose, at an earlier stage. But like even the kind of mainland Europe, like I was over at an event in Venice this year, in a pet industry event, and we went to one of the Arctic planets. So like Arctic Planet are huge. They've like 700 stores across Italy, and I was actually shocked to see how little they had in terms of their supplement range. So like the store was essentially full with dry food, kind of treats, toys, beds, the usual kind of stuff you'd expect. And then in their kind of wellness supplementation range, they had like a multivitamin for dogs, which I'd never even seen before. Probably not something I'd ever give my dog. I don't think he needs like a multivitamin daily. And um, I seen like salmon oil, and that was it. Like there was no, like say like green lip muscle, glucosamine, no joint support products, no calming products, no like skin allergy issue products. There was just your general tick
Yeah,
and flea stuff. So like really bare minimum, like if you had an older dog and you went in there, they would have actually had nothing for you. Um,
yeah.
so I was very
But
surprised because I would have thought it would be a bit more mature, but
but
clearly
but you
not.
you but you say that that's kind of how stores were here 10 years ago. Like the supplement
Yeah,
market in the last 5 years has blown up, and like things like digestive health has become massive. So like prebiotics, like pumpkin powder,
exactly.
or probiotics like mushroom root, and there's all these different products which have like fallen into the market, and now people are more aware now that like before it would just be I've got a dog food with green lip muscle. Oh well, that's that covered. Or I've got a senior dog food and
Yeah,
it's got some glucosamine in it. Whereas people are more like looking at it now, going, there isn't enough glucosamine in here to actually have an effect. Like they're more like we're in way more of a knowledge economy now. And like, look, not every company keeps on top of things. Like you'll walk into a pet shop still, and they'll be selling the same brands of dog food they had 15 years ago. But the difference is their
yeah,
takings are going down because they're not moving with the times. Because like dog food is now more about understanding the amount of meat in the bag, and like not having crazy amounts of ingredients, and there's a hell of a lot more to it now. And
exactly.
like things move in trends, but some companies just don't keep up with those trends. So it's always interesting when you walk into a shop and they've got a big store, but like you're like, where's the supplements? Like I see it still. I see it still in stores where you think you got a great store, but your supplement range is like you know some multivitamins and like maybe a little bit of
Yeah,
powder of some sort. It's like or like some cod liver oil capsules, and like and the thing is as well, it's about educating people as well when they're selling supplements. Like if you're why would you give cod liver oil rather than salmon oil? It's like because the omega threes
yeah,
vary. Like cod liver oil is great for developing brain function in young dogs, whereas salmon oil is good for like let's say joint care and like skin and coat. So it's like everything has its place, but again, you can't just say, well, I've got. Do you have salmon oil? No, I've got cod liver oil. Yeah, but it's not the same. And again, it's about
yeah,
if
exactly.
if if people actually want to make money, if they want to stay relevant, they actually have to keep up to date with what's actually going on in the industry at all time. But some people do, some people
Yeah.
don't. But cool,
Yeah,
right?
no, definitely, and like it was quite surprising with the Arca Planet. I was kind of surprised because like they've 700 stores, they've a large footprint. I would have thought to be a bit more innovation there. Now, I think they are looking at a full kind of refit on their kind of supplementation side, and then equally in kind of other stores like Germany's maybe a little bit more advanced, but like most mainland Europe, like on the supplementation side, it's still really new. Like even the idea of people giving supplements to their pets, maybe people are a little bit standoffish. Where I think UK, it's probably a bit more mature. Ireland, it's definitely mature. US, it's just a day to day thing where like you're probably not going to give your dog his food without putting two or three things onto it.
Yeah. But the things that like, and different markets do catch up at different speeds, and like America is like ahead in
Yeah,
a lot of ways, but there's not in everything, and like Europe will have some stuff, but it's ahead of itself. Like, but it's always interesting to see like the variation. But look, some companies just don't get the memo until they're almost going bankrupt. I mean, like look at Wilkinson's
yeah,
in the UK. We're king of the high street. Okay, you're the best store in the high street that no one goes down anymore. And you've got the biggest
yeah,
shop in a place where no one goes shopping anymore. So it's like sometimes companies can become a little bit slow to react because they kind of feel like there's other reasons rather than they're not actually moving with the times effectively. I mean, look at Woolworths. It's like Woolworths were a great store, but who buys CDs anymore? Or like Virgin Megastore or whatever.
yeah,
Like, so like the world moves on, and if you don't stay relevant, then you lose out.
yeah.
So
No, 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 exactly. And I think you need to be constantly innovating, otherwise you do get left behind.
you kind of need to have 5 year plans all the time as to where you're going. Like you can't just be saying, "Well, today I'm doing great." And I always said, like, look, if I was doing 10 years ago what I'm doing like if I'm doing today what I was doing 10 years ago, I wouldn't have a business anymore. And that's always been relevant throughout
Yeah.
the whole time I've been doing in the industry, is that within a 10-year period, your core market will have diminished by half. But then if you were doing new stuff all the time, that then is making you the money, you know. So that's where you're staying relevant. So
Yeah. No, exactly.
cool, man. So David, tell people where they can find you, and if they want to get in touch with you and borrow your products or become and like
Yeah,
distribution
yeah,
and
of course. So we basically kind of ship worldwide to an extent. So anywhere kind of in Europe, we've even customers as far as Australia, and like we can ship to the US if needs be. So we've only just we're in the process of moving to a new Shopify store. So if you go into hemp-heroes.com, so it's HEMPHEROS .com, you'll find our full range of products. We've our full range of human and pet products there. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, there's emails on the website. The email for myself is davis at and then HEMPHEROS.ie. And you can also get me on LinkedIn, David Hartigan. So yeah, if anyone's interested, having a chat, like we are looking for international distributors for our products to kind of branch into new markets, because we're kind of in a nice position now where we have, I suppose, a wide range of products. We have a good offering, and they're really high quality, and we're looking to break into new markets. So ideally, working with people who are already familiar with the markets, have the relationships there in place, and we can work with them and essentially grow kind of into new regions. So yeah, if there's anyone interested, make sure to get in touch, and we'd love to chat with you. And we might see you over at Super Zoo.
yeah, man. And like I say, look, I have quite a lot of American connections, so hopefully, if anyone in the US or is watching this in time before Super Zoo, hopefully it should go out before the Super Zoo event.
Yeah,
Get down and see David and have a chat. Right, lovely job. Thanks a million, David. And
brilliant.
yeah, take
Yeah, man.
care. Cheers, my man.
Yeah, cool. Catch you soon. Thanks, man.